Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Precious Metals Summit is brought to you by Inventa Capital.
After months of being under pressure, gold has sprung back. How far is it going to run? I'm with Felix Zulauf. He is with Zulauf Consulting. Felix, welcome to Kitco.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Where are we, Felix? It really looks like the markets are looking past this, how would you say, this tightening?
Well, we had the last 2 years was really downhill for the precious metals, and the last year in particular with the tightening of monetary policy was very painful for the precious metal sector. I think we are coming towards the end of the tighter money situation, so I think by next spring or so we will see a U-turn in monetary policy. And I think precious metals are beginning to discount that and are in a bottoming process and look great to me over the next few years. The 8-year cycle in gold with the top in 2020 points to a cyclical low in 24. But I think we will see the price low next year in 23, early 23, and then it's all up into the late 20s.
Well, let's talk about what are those themes that are going to push gold higher. We did see it spring up on the fact that we've seen like a weaker US dollar, and then we see that, again, like the Fed is going to be reduced tightening. What are the themes? What could propel gold higher?
Oh, we have many factors coming into play. First of all, there is the geopolitical situation that is moving towards a major conflict between the US and China, or between the democratic system and the autocratic system. That will shake the world in the next few years. The second is that many of the governments in the Western world are being bust and they will go bankrupt, and I think their currencies need to be reformed. So I think the next 4 or 5 years or so will be dramatic in that we see things that we used to see only in developing nations because they go bust every 20 years or so, or even sooner. It is coming to the industrialized world because we are over-indebted, and the setup is such that we cannot continue with the current situation, and we cannot go into fiscal deficits as in the past and finance those deficits by printing money, because that was possible when inflation was 2% or lower. Inflation is now much higher, and if our authorities try to do that, inflation will go much higher, and that will eventually lead to revolt by the people, and they will elect other politicians.
Why is that position pointed out, would you say, in the future right now? I mean, I would see that a lot of things are set up well for gold right now. You've had certainly geopolitical pressures right now with the Russia-Ukraine war. We've had the inflation scare that we've had up, and then certainly that there's been mounting debt that has incurred within the US. It would seem really that gold's time should be really right now.
Well, I think it's the wake-up call to investors that our system is entering a very unstable period, where the policy model that we have been applying in the last 15 years in particular will not work anymore. And we will have much higher inflation, and that will shake our fiat currency system. And it could lead to some currencies losing their attractiveness and need to be reformed, and that is new to the current generation of investors. They have never seen that in the industrialized world, and it's now coming to the industrialized world. That creates fear, uncertainty, and they are looking for a stable anchor, and gold has proven to be a stable anchor for thousands of years.
Talk about that new generation now. You said in another interview that crypto, in some sense, have been eating gold's lunch but we've had with the FTX imbroglio. Do you see that that's going to be favoring? Do you see that's going to be favoring gold?
Well, I'm not an expert on cryptocurrencies. I think at the beginning, cryptos made a lot of sense because there were only a few currencies and they were limited in supply, which differed from the fiat currencies. In the meantime, there are over 10,000 different currencies, and it seems unlimited, and therefore it's an asset class like any other in that sense. It goes down when global liquidity tightens, and it goes up when global liquidity improves and grows. And we have right now sort of a wake-up call to Bitcoin and crypto investors that all of a sudden you can lose everything, as happened last week. And I think this may also wake up some investors that look for a stable anchor, who wanted to be in cryptos as a stable anchor, and now see that gold is a much more stable place to be. And it's proven and tested throughout history, which is not the case for cryptos yet.
How do you play the gold theme? If you believe that gold is going to go higher, where do you invest?
Well, the first step is physical gold, of course, and then you can buy physical gold through all sorts of funds and products. And then I would also recommend to go into the mining sector, because the gold in the ground is assets in the ground that get more valued and higher valued over time as the price of gold rises. And then you have a production and profit that they can create and pay dividend, and the miners are cheaper than they have been in many, many years.
Environmental social governments, you see a lot of the miners, a lot of the juniors are embracing these precepts as being important, and being important for investors, being important for the value of the companies. What's your thought on the ESG initiatives?
Well, I think it's right to be very careful with our planet and care about it. And the ESG movement at the beginning had all the right goals, that we care about the planet. And I think companies should care about the planet and behave respectfully and responsibly, with or without any label. And the label was a good thing at the beginning. I think over time it has become a fad and fashionable. And I think everything that begins as a good thing, taking to an excess, becomes a bad thing eventually. So I think it's overdone. But I think it's absolutely right and responsible that companies, mining companies, take care of the environment. Absolutely.
The other big theme in mining is critical metals, industrial metals, the build out of infrastructure. Talk about that theme, and then also weigh that against what you see with on the precious metal side. These are two horses. How do you bet on these two horses? Do you bet on both, for instance, or do you see a timing that will actually be involved with precious metals running ahead at a certain time, and then also energy transition, or just simple infrastructure build out, and how important copper or how important iron will be, and how you invest in that?
Well, obviously, gold is a monetary metal, which is not the case for all the other metals. The precious metal sector moves with gold. The base metal sector is related to the capital spending activity in the world economy. And they had a tremendous time due to the huge infrastructure boom in China, which is over. And therefore, I do not believe that demand will be as robust in coming years as it was in the last 20 years. Because China is overbuilt, they have large real estate vacancy rates of 20% or so. And therefore, the driving force for the base metals will not be demand, it will be a shrinking supply. And due to the bear market that we have had in the last 10 years in many of the commodities, it means that the companies who produce those metals have invested less and less, and there is an underinvestment. The same actually in energy that has been in fossil fuels energy, where governments have been bashing the fossil fuel industry and say, you are bad guys because we want to move away from fossil fuels, you are polluting the environment, etc. I think that underinvestment that has been the case for so many years creates a scarcity, and combine that with the rising conflict or intensifying conflict between the autocratic and the democratic system, that creates disruptions and distortions of the supply chain. So I think the next run up in base metal prices is due to increasing scarcity and not to increasing demand. But it will be driven nonetheless with a swing in the world economy. As soon as the policy is set to improve the world economy, which I think is going to happen sometimes during the first half of 23, then you will see the second up leg in the base metals, probably lasting into 24 or 25. And then, certain metals, particularly copper, that is helped by the electrification move, although that is tiny relative to China. And China is the decisive factor for the base metals.
Felix, thanks for speaking with Kitco.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure with you. Thank you.
My name is Michael McQuarrie with Kitco Mining. You are watching 2022 Precious Metals Summit Zurich, sponsored by Inventa Capital.
Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Precious Metals Summit is brought to you by Inventa Capital.